Face is on.
Makeup, anyone?
Got plenty already. This is day one truLondon, the second track of the day, focusing on the candidate experience. Pleased to have Leigh Carpenter from the Candidate Experience Awards with us, and also some of the winners from this year. So we've got a great opportunity to hear some of their stories and get some lively discussion. If I can hand over to you, Leigh, just to give a little bit of an intro, that would be great.
Great, thanks, Sally. So yeah, we had our first UK Candidate Experience Awards last week, of which we had 10 winners. We honoured 10 winners in the UK, which is fantastic. Of those 10, we also had 3 winners with distinction. Delighted to have 3 of the winners join us today, RMS, Avanade and Empiric. I thought maybe we could give each of you an opportunity just to give us a brief idea of what your organisations do. So Steve, let's kick off from Empiric.
So yep, Empiric is a global recruitment firm. We deal with the more specialist end, niche end of the market, covering technology within banking, finance, oil and gas specialists, and expanding across other disciplines within pharmaceutical insurance. So.
Thanks, Steve. Bethan, RMS?
Yeah, Risk Management Solutions, or RMS, is a catastrophe risk modeler. We build models for the insurance sector. They quantify financial risk based around man-made and natural disasters such as pandemics, terrorism, flooding, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc.
Sally?
Not quite as impressive as that.
Follow that.
Yes.
Go 5 stages on
that. Sorry. Avanade are a Microsoft systems integrator. We were founded by Accenture and Microsoft in the year 2000. So we're quite a technical organisation, but we span across sort of many industries. We're quite well known for .NET, SharePoint, AX and CRM. So yeah, relatively young organisation, but now with about 17,000 professionals worldwide.
Great, thanks, Sally. So I thought maybe the best way to kick off this session, we had some great content and some benchmark data, and an opportunity for any participating organisation to benchmark their candidate experience. We had some great results from our first year. So that maybe kick off with what's driving your candidate experience in each of your organisations before we then look at some of the specific case studies. Anybody want to kick off?
Strong believer of ladies first.
Okay, I'll jump in. Obviously, I just mentioned we've got 17,000 professionals worldwide, so growth is very much top of Avanade's agenda. So as we grow, it's really important that we kind of grow at the speed that we need to, but also preserve the culture. So it's really important that we get the right type of people in. And that our reputation remains strong. So the candidate experience for us has always been sort of top of our agenda. What we try to do is remember that there are many candidates out there, and we like to sort of test our experience out to make sure it's still as good as it was when we kicked off sort of a few years back. So I think for Avanade, it's really, really important that you constantly put yourselves in the shoes of the candidates, you walk through the experience, and if things are not working, most importantly, that you fix those things that are broken.
Can I ask, have you found that you've wanted to reduce the number of candidates that come through that funnel so that you really do make that experience very personal to them? Have you targeted in some way to try and manage that?
Yeah, you see, for Avanade, what we recruit for is really, really niche. So our candidate pool is quite small anyway. So for example, if we were looking for a SharePoint architect, there aren't many. I think it's important that you get many candidates through the doors and that they all have some sort of contact from Avanade. But yeah, you know, the smaller the pool is, obviously, the easier it is to give them a good experience. So what we try to do is we do a lot of pipelining. So if people are maybe not right now, we have like a talent community that we keep in constant contact with and try and, you know, be giving them a long-term candidate experience with a view to the future. So yeah, we try to have it as small as possible, but also, you know, it's about anyone could be a potential candidate of Avanade. So our kind of golden rule is that if you apply to Avanade, you do get some sort of response back. You're never just, you know, going down that kind of black hole.
And if you were relationship managing me as someone who was maybe a potential hire moving forward, how often might I hear from you? And that's not a trick question.
Yeah.
It's key to being able to get that balance right. But what would you aim for as best practice?
So, if it were yourself, we're very much driving our women's initiative at the moment.
Great.
Avanade are only, there we go. We only have 15% female population at Avanade. Okay. So if you applied for a role at Avanade, you're actually going to get candidate experience from two sides. So you're going to get the experience from myself as a UK recruiter. If you weren't necessarily right, so to speak, for a role that I had then, you would be into my pipeline, and I'd like to touch base with you perhaps once every 2 months. In addition to that, we have a chap called Jay Jackson, who is actually part of our diversity and inclusion team, and he has a like a talent kind of base really of women that we think could be a potential good fit for Avanade in the future. And of him you would have regular contact month by month basis. You'd be invited to events and stuff. So that's very much, I think, going above and beyond, the candidate experience.
Thank you. Sorry, Leigh.
Any other questions from anyone else? Sally? Okay. What drives your candidate experience at RMS?
Gosh, a number of things. RMS, very similar actually to Avanade in the fact that we're a mid-sized company. We're just over 1,000 people globally. We have about 175 now in the UK, but we're still growing. We've got double-digit growth, which is very exciting. And so when I set up the talent acquisition function 4 years ago, to pull a process together, I had two things in mind: getting a robust, consistent process in place to allow us to hire the best talent, very similar to you, but also with the candidate experience in mind. We've all had those terrible candidate experiences ourselves. And in the day and age, in the age of social media, if there's a poor candidate experience communicated in online forums globally, then that will have a massive impact on your brand. And as a small business that's still growing, we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that everyone that has an interaction with us on the candidate side walks away, even if they just don't get the job, that they felt they've had a very fair, consistent process. Yeah.
There's a really interesting, I'll come into the shop now. I think there's a really interesting point that you make. But I do have a question, and that's, when we look at all of the winners, they're all specialist niche in which it's really difficult to find talent.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about candidate experience, how different do you think it would be if you were hiring for a contact centre or or do you make the effort because the people that you're chasing are so much in demand?
That's a good question. I would like to think personally they would get the same experience.
Yeah.
A very fair, consistent experience. Having not recruited for a contact centre, I don't know whether that's...
Apologies, sorry.
But I don't know whether that would be something that we could do. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about how many people you've got in your team, if you've got capacity, how often you can contact folks. If you work 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, then maybe you could do to have that high level of contact. But you're right, we actually target scientists, postdoc scientists, right through to technology folks, very specialist niche skills that we need for the business. And those, very similar to Sally, in the fact that we hold those candidates on file knowing that we're going to contact them again in the future, and we try and stay in touch with them. So we've got a talent acquisition coordinator, and we try to have regular contact with our candidates that we know will at some point be invited to join us as employees. I'm not sure I answered your question there, Bill.
No, it does, but it's something that strikes me that when I'm looking at the candidate experience field as a whole, that the real efforts and initiatives are being driven by people who have real hiring difficulties, and therefore have a commercial reason to do that rather than necessarily a branding reason, which a lot of people talk about. This is going to damage our brand and stuff. We're actually what we're seeing is the real differences are being made in where there's a real candidate shortage rather than in a general market.
If I can offer you an example, Bill, we worked with a UK-based major retailer last month on trying to basically focus workshops on candidate experience, improve things. This is an organisation that hired 1,000 people in December alone for retail positions. And the skill levels are the complete opposite of what the likes of OLS would look for. And they got two challenges. I think this is similar to the business like that you're describing. One is that their potential applicants are customers. So therefore, the bad experience as an applicant will impact potentially sales very demonstrably. And the second is, internally in the organisation, they're challenged in finding these skills. It's managing the time of the recruitment team to deal with huge volume.
So what's your ratio of recruiters to hires, roughly?
Oh, gosh.
Bill hiring what sort of numbers?
Nothing like that. There's 3 of us in the team in London. We hire about 100 people each year. I'll give you an example.
100 people, yeah. So you're dealing with 8 to 10 requirements between 3 people. That's fairly.
But some of that, I mean, we talked about this earlier, some of it's about the funnel. So there's nothing to stop all of us aspiring to.
I'm not being critical of this.
No, but I think what we're saying is that that's what candidates are asking for, regardless of the roles that they're going to be taking. They want to be looked after, they want it to have pace and to feel engaged, or whether they're going to work in a large retail store or in a very specialist role. But how scalable is that? Yeah. And some of it comes back to the targeting. So if you're a large retailer, do you build relationships with local schools and the community so that actually you're not really having to do attraction? You're simply managing people through that process, and you can do that in a way that's scalable to these solutions from a high touch perspective. Now, I can't prove that, but at the same time, we see all of this happening all the time, that the engagement with candidates is becoming earlier and earlier, long before they hit further education or that.
If they ever become it's almost like you don't become candidates, you connect with an organisation rather than a job. It's
almost. I mean, I suppose leading on from what Johnny said, if you speak to somebody from McDonald's, I mean, they firmly know that if you apply to work there, you must be a consumer. You wouldn't want to work there for any other reason, the fact you work there. If you therefore, because you are a regular customer, you expect, okay, maybe not to be served or maybe not to be answered in 3 minutes, but you expect a similarly quick turnaround. And if you don't get it, you can go to Burger King, KFC, wherever else you want. So that's a very, at the point of interaction, they expect things in a certain way. I don't know, say with you two, how many of the people you reject are in a position to maybe buy your service or product?
They all know each other, though, don't they? That's the thing. You work in a very close.
We've got to be really careful because, like for example, AX is one of our areas, and we're probably talking 100 to 200 people that have got those skills in the UK. So again, that's another reason why we have. There's multiple reasons why we've got to ensure our candidate experience is good. Of which one is. But what I was thinking before about what you were saying is we do have some areas at high volume. So, for example, if I open a .NET role, we could have 500 CVs. We have different recruiters looking after different verticals, but they all have the same KPIs, and we're all measured on our candidate experience. There's an 80% goal, 80% or above goal that you have. So I think if you're in an organisation where there are high volumes in certain areas, I think if all your recruiters are trained the same, if they all have the same metrics, yes, some people are going to have harder jobs than others, but I still think you should be able to have that kind of same level of experience across the board.
I think we've been through a thing in recruiting terms where for a number of years recruiting was kind of hijacked by the digital media mafia, which became about attraction, not actually about recruiting. And all of the conversations that we were having were around the recruiting of people, the attraction of people, and how can we attract more and more people, make the funnel bigger and bigger, and the volume has just become unattainable, and very few people actually talk about the recruiter experience and how are you going to deal with that, and there is a real relationship between the recruiter experience and the pressure you're under as a recruiter. Sorry, I know you're the digital media man. The recruiter marketing man. The relationship between the recruiter and how they feel about their job and the pressure they're under and the experience they give out.
Absolutely.
But everything we do at Avenard is tracked.
Yeah.
Like the boss of talent acquisition, he just lives in a kind of place where every single statistic is tracked. So every experience on our career site, every is KPI'd.
every point of the candidate experience has got a number to it, and we've got to deliver upon those numbers. And I completely agree with Sally that it doesn't really matter what kind of organisation you're in. It might be a different experience, might be different volumes, but it doesn't mean you can't set KPIs that you can deliver upon.
I think the most important KPI, to Mervyn's point, is the candidate expectation. I think candidates, all they want to know is what is the expectation. So Mervyn mentioned you walk into McDonald's, you expect to be served in 3 minutes. Okay, that's out there. So therefore, if I apply to your job, just tell me what the expectation is. I don't think it matters if it's 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 days.
7
tell me what it
days,
is.
14 days.
Tell me what it is and meet it, regardless of whether it's niche hiring or volume hiring. I think it's just about putting it out there, saying, this is our SLA to you, the candidate. We're going to meet this service level agreement. And if we don't, here's your method of recourse.
That's really true, because there's a lot of graduate sites that I look at. And what got me thinking about this was when Accenture made the change, you need a certain number of UCAS points in order to progress. But initially that was never told at the front end, it came down the end, and they became very clear about saying, right, as soon as you go to the site, it says, right, this is the requirement. So if you don't meet the requirement, we don't think you're a bad person, just don't waste your time going through the funnel. I've looked at lots of organisations where there are eliminators which clearly rule you out deep in the ATS. So it's when somebody's gone, especially for graduate recruitment, when somebody's gone 1 hour or 2 hours into the application process, they get eliminated on something they actually could have been eliminated on in the first step, like UCAS points or whatever it is. And I don't understand why that happens. That kind of drives me mad.
That said, there's something not great about the first 10 questions you get asked. That kind of, I don't know how. If you talk about the candidate experience, I completely agree. Don't make me waste an hour. But meanwhile, don't make me feel that
tell you before they ask the
criteria is so small that it's really
But
uncomfortable.
tell you before you ask the question. Say, right, this is the requirement of the job. This is what it is, and that's our hiring matrix, and we'll tell you now.
I think with it though, there's also different approaches you can take, because at Empiric we're starting to look at. Obviously, we hire experienced people in our business, and that there is an approach to that. But then when it comes to the actual, say, graduate hires, and we're even looking at pre-graduates now, in the sense, or people that aren't going to become graduates because of the time that we're in. There's going to be this plethora of people that aren't going to uni, and rather than just looking to put marketing out there and say we're looking for these, we're having it that we're engaging with a school or a university, or picking a few that is something that's manageable for us, as opposed to having it that here's this site, everyone come to it and download everything, and then at that point there's a huge volume that is unsustainable. That said,
so it's required to people rather than people to jobs, really.
Some of those criteria come out of trying to reduce the number of people in the process. Is there anything scientific that says that number of UCAS points means that you won't be a top performer? Probably not. But the sheer volume creates these rules.
We have to put something in to stop people.
So, and that doesn't feel very good, actually, if you think from a candidate perspective. So we're all coming back to the same. If you've got these communities, then your decision making becomes something much more subjective, but hopefully more linked to the culture and someone's overall capabilities within the organisation versus the science of it. I think that's part of why it's gone the way it's gone. And there's probably room for all of these things, because you can still have a very poor candidate experience in a high touch process if there's just too many people in it.
When we get beyond because one of the really interesting things I thought out of the interviews was the view, and I'd be interested in each of your individual answers, of when somebody's a candidate, when they're an applicant, and how long they're a candidate for. Because again, even in this conversation, a lot of what we're talking about as candidate experience is around the application process and the technology, but kind of it's a bit more than that.
So in my head, as soon as somebody makes a decision that they want to change a job, or they're leaving university and they've made a decision as to where they want to start their career, that's an applicant. So how they find information on RMS, the quality of the information, the website, the fact that they can talk to a recruiter on chat between the hours of 5 and 7 every day, Monday through to Friday, will then enable them to make a decision, an informed decision as to whether they want to apply or not. That to me is when a candidate becomes a candidate
before an applicant.
You're a passive candidate.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think anyone's a candidate, really, because we're all passive candidates. If you've got an interest in any organisation, you're potentially a candidate.
Absolutely. And then from all the way through the process, you know, we brief candidates, we debrief them, they come in for the interviews, they have an iPad when they walk through the door for their day of interviews, so they've got the agenda on there. We have Plague on there, which is a game that we have a character in, Plague Inc. And you know, they've got access to Mail Online, we're part of DMGT, so there's a lot of interaction that they have. They can take that iPad for the day, all the way through the process, right through to the onboarding. So, okay, HR pick up the onboarding piece, they come in, they have their induction day one, but we are still, in talent acquisition, are still in touch with the candidate or the new employee at the end of their probationary period, at the end of month 3. What was your experience? Tell us about your experience. What can we change? What can we do better? Is the job the role that we shared with you? Are you doing the role that did we fairly advertise the role? So that it's only at that point do they stop really being an active candidate. We ask for referrals, etc. So and even now, as a small business, growing business, you know, we will grab a coffee with those hires that we've made, that I made 4 years ago, to see how they're doing and how their career is progressing. That's genuine interest from my side, but they don't stop being a candidate until the end of the probationary period.
What about peers?
So I think my answer in the interview to this was they never stops, and I think we're a little bit different because we are part of the HR team. So Becky over there in the corner, she does our onboarding, for example. So she spends the first week with all the new joiners. Like in your organisation, you would hand over to HR. And then the aftercare we offer is ongoing.
Whereas you say you hand over to HR, but you see yourself as part of HR.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really.
So do you have HR deliverables?
Yeah, okay. I sit within. So we used to be 4 years ago when I joined. We were part of operations, and they merged us into HR, which was great for me because I have a degree in HR. My background's HR, so it's slightly different to a lot of other organisations. But it means that you do focus a lot more of your energy around that whole retention piece.
Okay.
So I have KPIs around that too. So yeah, it's constant. And even when somebody leaves now, my team don't do the exit interview, but it comes straight to us because it is the same team. My recruitment team is a sub-team of the extended HR team, so it is quite different.
Would you have alumni referrals? Because that seems to be something that is extending someone's candidate status back to their exit and then them recommending someone even after they've left.
Yeah, we do.
We're just, because mine's a global role, so we're just introducing a pilot in North America.
Interesting.
Because we're part of Accenture, we can kind of learn from them.
Because they've done that for alumni referrals for a while.
They also do a great job of it in the States. You know, the actual alumni network, the alumni rehires represent about 15% of their hires of people coming back into the organisation.
Yeah, I think we're aiming, because I run the alumni site that we have, and we're just doing this pilot in North America. We're aiming for about 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
And we just did a campaign where I sent a Valentine's card out to all our alumni, sort of saying "miss you."
Yeah, and not the same without it.
I said lots of things are not the same without it. Lots of, you know, we can rekindle a beautiful relationship, and we're on the verge just sending them out.
Yeah, little subline: you don't call, you don't write. You don't send me flowers anymore.
That depends who replies.
It was really interesting. The Sodexo one that made the difference in the States was when they actually started. When you go onto the home alumni page, it features pictures of all the people who came back.
Yeah, they do that.
And it's got a story behind, and you can click on it, and the story is kind of, I went for this, and I actually think that's a bigger organisational challenge, because that's about how you treat that person at point of leaving. Because for most people, once you leave an organisation, you're excommunicated, you weren't any good anyway, you were burnt out. Time to move on. You're never going to come back.
God, we always say, please come back. And in the UK, we're at about 10%, aren't we? What we call boomerang hires.
We're doing that. We're running stories, sort of boomerangs, sort of why they came back. But also in the newsletter this month that I'm sending out, I've also got a couple of stories from guys who have gone and are very happy.
Yeah.
And just for them to talk about their business, and I think that's it shouldn't just be about I'm talking to the alumni. Could you come back, please?
It's
Because
also
going to tell them not. People don't. Some of them don't want to come back.
If you get a referral that an organisation is good, that's in some of the research we've done. You get the referral which you believe the most is someone who used to work for the company and says it's okay there, you'll be all right. It was just for me, it was the right time for me to go and do something else.
People leave,
whatever it is.
They leave.
In reality, it provides a benefit if there's people out there that you're looking to bring to your business, but they can see a reason why they shouldn't. But then that's better for all, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to onboard people that are fitting a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be.
Accenture was to get tens of millions of pounds of business, new business from their alumni.
I've got a question around the candidate experience and the working experience, because presumably you try to design the candidate experience so it reflects what it's like to work there. So it's past the onboarding, kind of, what it's like here, what it's like to be an employee here is exactly as I expected because of the way the hand will be there. But businesses grow and evolve, and sometimes new departments start. What do you do anything to make sure it still reflects? Maybe 2 years ago it reflected what it was like to work there, but since then you've gone through changes, you've got a new division, it's a different place to work. I mean, one of the reasons employees leave, as you know, they say it's not the same place it was to work when I joined. So to what extent does your experience reflect what it's like to work there now, as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
So RMS actually, it feels like every 8 or 12 months we evolve. Which is super exciting. If you want to come into a business and you're going to sit in the same job doing the same thing for the next 10 years, don't come to RMS. If you want to come to a company that is exciting and you can see your career evolving every year, this is the right place for us. And it's that type of questioning that we have in the process to make sure that they're not just in it for the short haul, that they want to grow their career, that they want to grow their skill sets. So it's tweaking the process to make sure that we still fit what we're trying to achieve as a business. To answer your question?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's more the strategic way the business wants to be, but I mean, it's quite often there will be people there who actually, the experience of working in a business that's growing like that isn't the same as the business thinks it is. So to what extent, I mean... So
that's a HR, do you get that in HR?
We do a yearly survey, we call it Pulse, which is the employee engagement survey, and that's very heavy. I'm not sure what else HR do, but they really do push that.
I'm not sure what else HR do. Squeeze that out. What else do HR do other than
it's a great survey, and what they do is listen to that and then push through, publish it to everyone and saying here's areas that are good, and here's areas that we need to improve.
And we look at the results from the year before. So our employee engagement is higher than the industry average. I don't think I won't share the exact percentage, but we had a slip from last year, only a marginal slip, but because of that, a huge employee engagement plan was launched. And preserving the culture at Avanade is highly top of the agenda. It's a 13-year-old organisation that's renowned for its kind of family feel. Our leadership team are out on the floor, etc. Everyone's very approachable. So what we do with our candidates is we talk openly about the environment, but what we do when they join is it what we told you it was going to be? And I think that's quite important. And I think the odd person might say, and it might be because they're in some sort of detached role for whatever reason, but majority say it's exactly what you told me. And I think if you're constantly doing that, you're making sure that the experience is what you sold.
I'm wondering, I think one of the things when we talk about when someone stops being a candidate, part of it, the measuring and understanding if it lived up to it is very important, but it's how much a line manager feels engaged in what was said. So I'm told a story as a candidate, but actually if my then manager doesn't know and understand that story and live up to that, then all you're ever doing is curing problems later. So you do the measure and you then cure the issue. And some of it is the candidate experience done right and actually seen right through to someone's exit has a huge impact. But I'm not sure as a manager, if I've never really been involved in recruiting and understanding, if I really recognise the huge impact that I have. And it's perhaps how you, in your functions, can make sure that you know that a manager's living up to it and not just as a fix, but how they actually really engage in it.
A great tip a lot of people talk about is to get the hiring managers to actually interview you. Just get yourself interviewed by particularly one who doesn't often hire. Interview as if you're new, and kind of how do they sell the company? How do they put forward the vision? Are they reflecting their team? Because, you know, a lot of managers see their teams as they would like them to be, as opposed to how they are.
But at Avanade, you performance manager, hiring managers, they're involved in that.
Absolutely. I think that's the question.
Sorry, we probably misinterpreted the question.
I was thinking you could extend that to all employees. Ask them that process. You know, if they were going to become the brand ambassadors and tap into their referral network.
They're all potential referrals.
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, in RMS, what we're doing, so that's actually what we do. We don't have them interview us, but we sit in on the interviews. So we train the hiring manager. So the hiring manager brings together the job description. So they got approval for the headcount, pull together the job description. We sit down with them for the best part of an hour to actually really understand what the role is. Half the battle is getting the right job description. And if you're in a business that's constantly growing, most of those roles are going to be brand new. And so defining the right job to get out into the market, not wasting candidates' time advertising actually something that we're not going to be able to fill, is part of this whole experience. So after we've trained our managers, we sit in on their interviews to make sure that they are selling it appropriately, not overselling it, not underselling it, making sure that they're not asking those naughty questions that we shouldn't be asking, and actually having a debrief with them and tweaking the interviews. So that's certainly something that we push at RMS.
I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a moment. Do you think the whole candidate experience measurement thing is a making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed process? You know, personally, I don't find it the conversation that aspirational. You know, when I think of recruitment and you're trying to target your competitors' talent and all that sort of stuff, you want to be seen out there in the marketplace as not just having a positive candidate experience. You want to treat the job seeker market like you're the Beatles arriving in the US and the job seekers are shaking the gates to try and get in. It's about those raving fans. You know, I mean, are we just by talking about the candidate experience, and is it just making sure that we're doing the bare minimum?
I don't think so. I think that's a defining point, isn't it? How you interpret and how you choose to apply it will be what you get out of it. Because if you do just treat it as a box ticking exercise, then you're not going to get the value out of it. But the reality is, if you do, and then you bring that into your process to be that, well, yeah, actually, we want people that come in the door. We want everyone leaving our office wanting to work for us.
Yeah, even the ones who weren't successful in the recruitment process, to go out and rave about.
We actually get referrals from people that unfortunately we've rejected because they've had such a good experience.
Yeah. Everyone's, and it's the interesting thing about like when's a candidate. Well, even if they're not a candidate that's now being considered by the organisation, they're a passive advocate. So
I'm just sort of wondering if the whole conversation around candidate experience is enough of a stretch target. You know,
but it's interesting on that. There's some may know here. There was an incident in the recruitment industry. I think people know about 6 weeks ago. The RAGs, which is the recruitment advertising annual awards and dinner. The guest host was Jack Whitehall, the comedian, and they were doing the awards bit. And I think they had the guy from X Factor voicing, you know, the finalists are blah blah blah. Tell us who's won, Jack. And he just muttered the name of one of the 4 that were up, and they all started cheering and everything. And then he said, "Actually, no, you haven't won." He said, "But I applied for you for a job about 3 years ago, and you never responded." Now the winners are, and you know what? That is candidate experience. You know, and you might say, "Well, he was a new guy. I mean, he's only 24 now, but you know, he was a new graduate, probably applying. It was a professional services firm. Not a million miles away from Accenture, but not Accenture. But even so, you know, you don't know who. I can't swear, so
is it the bare minimum?
You don't know who your.
But Paul, there's no point, right? Your analogy about the Beatles turning up and caring for the fans at the airport waving their flags, right? It's like saying, right, we're going to look after the fans, make sure they all turn up and have the publicity, but someone forgets to book the bloody flight from the UK because it's actually the small little details that are essential, because otherwise the fans turn up expecting greatness. The Beatles don't show up, and they hate the Beatles because they queue for 10 hours. And it's kind of, unfortunately, most companies just don't get the basics right. And they want to talk about the sexy stuff, which is the passionate stuff and the kind of the fun stuff. But you can't do that unless you reply to candidates, come back to the basics. That's why, unfortunately, it ends up being a more slowed down conversation, because they're the important things.
I think another thing with it as well is that you know, whether it's just an interview process or how much of an identity you get across as a company. You know, with us, and it touches on what you were saying about how do you make sure the company's still remaining the same. We have an office that we do our interviews in. Around that office, we've got pictures of all different staff members on the different, we do lunch clubs for high achievers, we do holiday targets. And it's the fun pictures of the employees. So when the candidate's waiting to be interviewed, they're looking at all these pictures of the staff they're going to be interviewed by in their casual gear, having had a drink, doing this, doing that. And it's sort of having it that we're getting in touch.
I think your competitors will probably be going down that track too. So it gets to a point where everyone is having fun in the workplace, like visuals, you know, and it just sort of starts to blend in.
That's communicating a culture. But I mean, if you're a very KPI-driven business, what do you do about the talent acquisition process that actually makes people realise they're going into a KPI-driven business? So what is it about the experience that they'll realise when they say, yes, I know the kind of business I'm joining, because I can tell from the way they've...
I don't know if that's the candidate experience. You know, it's not about the candidate per se. Well, it's not about getting to know them. It's about saying, we're like this, get to know us. And I don't know if it goes deep enough into their minds. Like a bit like, I like that I miss you with the referrals, you know, with the alumni, because I think that's... I could see the passion when you were talking about it, and everyone laughed, and it was that emotional connection. And I don't know if doing the fundamentals right is enough of an emotional driver. It's not for me. To me, it's just the bare bloody minimum of doing it.
But it can differentiate you.
Fall short. You could do all of that and then not follow through, and that would pee me off a lot more. Absolutely. It's quite a conservative thing that you do, in the sense that you are dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and I think it takes a different kind of mindset, a different kind of person to do that. So I think we can be all bells and whistles, and I'm far more of the person, but I don't do what you do, and I would feel far safer as a candidate having listened in.
I was
mean,
responded to in a timely manner.
Recruitment is a marketing function now, and people mistake marketing for being really super creative and exciting, but actually if it's not done on time, it fails every time. And part of the Candidate Experience Awards is that it's still early days. So we've tried to industrialise, we've used technology, we've put so many things in place to improve it or change the process, and we're learning that actually there's no substitute for regular human contact that's on time. And things like sending out newsletters or updates or doing stuff online, if that can be relied upon and you can feel confident in the process, often those things far outweigh some of the other great stuff. But some of the things you're talking about, and I think maybe you were alluding to earlier, is you've got these advocates in the organisation, these amazing people who are really passionate about it. It's how you make sure that gets to the market, that you can help them understand what an impact they can have on potential candidates. But it is a bit of a journey, and it's almost like you can't miss out the basics, but then when you do the really cool stuff, you can overwhelm people and then not live up behind the scenes.
You've got to measure, don't you? You've got to have something, a framework in which to measure.
And you've got to have your plan to measure, because to your point, you can measure anything you like, but actually, what are you trying to do? What's your objective of the process? And it might just be, my time to hire needs to be this, because that's going to affect my shareholder value. Versus, how do candidates feel they're all potential customers? Everybody will have every business will have a different lens, I suppose.
I guess where I'm coming from, I would love to see recruiters, when they talk about the candidate experience, and not so much like we got back to the candidate and we that sort of stuff, but actually more in the context of they're really passionate about fire in the belly, and I don't know if we're there yet. Fire in the belly.
One thing we're doing, Avanade, is having brand champions. And they're not necessarily in recruiting; they can be hiring managers. They might not be, and that's part of a new EVP we're rolling out. But they're going to be. Certainly might not have. It's just a bit of a global plan. It's a global plan.
You're doing it.
It's going to change your role.
But it is about, and how it's going to be measured. We're only rolling this out now because you don't just want to necessarily parachute someone in who's going to say how it's fantastic and they leave and think, who was that person? And it's got nothing to do with my job. But it is about someone who's going to go in and be passionate, and that's passion is one of the values that's really come out of our EVP actually. One of the big things. Another thing I was just going to say about candidate care experience and measuring it is that another thing we've got in the pipeline is actually putting our stats onto our career site so people can go in and see.
It's public, it's out there.
Which would really get us accountable.
Do you think there's room for an industry-wide, global sort of stats sort of platform, or a little ticker or something up there, right inside of all career sites?
It's funny you say that, because there was, not that I think I took part in it, but there was a survey by the firm about 6 months ago, and it was generally all in-house recruiters, and various different questions. There was one that said, do you use statistics to measure your performance? And it was under half.
Oh, yeah.
And I commented, not normally do this, I said, I can't believe that.
Wow.
And no one else made any comment. I don't need you messing it up. But I just can't, because I just can't say I can do it. And I think it's something that's, and my background's recruitment advertising. We've hidden away before digital came along. Hidden away with, put a picture out, what your response is, probably okay. And digital does not let you hide. But I still think there can be a tendency in HR, in recruiting, to try and hide away and say, yeah, generally we did all right. I think the quality's okay because only a few left. You can go much deeper than that.
But if you don't do it, someone's going to put up a Glassdoor and tell people about it anyway.
Absolutely.
Glassdoor's growth has been phenomenal because they've socialized job seeking like nobody else has. Even LinkedIn, which hasn't quite, it's socialized business networking, not job seeking. And it's given the power back to people. So, employees should be saying, well, you know what, we've got good stats we're proud of. Let's put them out there before somebody else tells a bad story. We should tell a bad story first before the good story.
We all know that platforms like that tend to be more sort of negatively skewed. The people who weren't successful in the process, or
but you still get you still get positive stuff in there. I mean, I've always think it's amazing. I'm probably going down a different road now. But if you buy a kettle, you go on 10 sites that tell you what kettle you should buy and how much you should pay for it and what colour it should be and what sort. And you change jobs. Yeah. You talk to an agency who would say, do this job because it's really good, because they're going to. You talk to a company who says, this is really good. And you talk to your mates who go, I never heard of that company. Do what you like. Give me a drink. And then you make this absolute life-changing decision based on
around a kettle. Life-changing decision around a kettle.
But about a job, and that's why I got something like Glassdoor, and I'm really glad that's come along. And we look at that a lot, actually. I wish there were more of them.
Down in, I'm based in New Zealand, but in Australia they've taken TripAdvisor and they've created a job advisor. So
Nice.
I got Glassdoor CEO is ex-TripAdvisor. That's
right. Okay.
Background.
Yeah.
This brings up an interesting point about the candidate experience and at what point I want to be public. So my decisions are very public now. So let's say you're on LinkedIn. The minute you change jobs and it's official, you then get feedback. You understand how your broader professional network feels about the decision you made. So the company, and to your point, why do you not do all the research? Instead of, I've changed jobs, how does everyone feel about it? But there is an element of how public do people want to be in the job seeking process to actually go out to their network and say, I'm looking, I'm not happy, or I've had this offer. And it's being able to give everybody a way of getting to good information and good advice. So the more open you are, so whether it's the ticker or that information, they can access that without necessarily publicising to their network. They're looking. And I think that's a generational thing. I think I'm sounding old. As I'm saying it, I'm going to say about 100. Because I don't know, perhaps, if new millennials and Gen Ys feel the same. They may actually be much more public in their job-seeking activity.
They are. I mean, they're more likely to... I mean, those I interact with in the community side tend to ask around each other a lot more. Certainly, Gen X, certainly, and before that, would be very, this is my business. I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing. There's almost shame on you. You're changing jobs. There's this old-fashioned kind of, because they were brought up in the job for life thing. It's a failure of you that you want to change jobs. Whereas now, I think, particularly as we go to the more, and I'm sure it'll come up many times over the 2 days, the more contract flexible working, people will drift in and out of different things, which actually was a question I was going to ask about the contractor experience and the permanent candidate experience, but we might not have time for that. And I think that certainly those entering the job market now and have been in the last few years are much freer with their sharing in terms of, I worked here, I didn't like it, this might be good for you. But also what's interesting, going back to referrals, our quarterly research, we always find that the smaller businesses, the ones under 50 employees, when they have a burst in hiring, personal networks are the number one route, and that's obviously all the networks. And then last quarter, you'll see a rise in personal networks again, and that was the 50 to 250 employed businesses going to personal networks and business networks before job boards, print, advertising agencies. So there is, I don't know about big global businesses if they use it as much. I think it's just part of the integrated, you know, we have a team that tracks. But certainly the kind of, I think the small businesses get this referral thing right. And you'll know, because if people are only working for you because they've got bills to pay and they'd rather not be working for you, but there's no other job, they're not going to recommend friends and ex-alumni to come and work for you. So if the referral networks aren't producing anything, it might be an implication that you don't have an overly engaged workforce.
I think we need to wrap up. I'm so sorry. I think you've been probably trying. So we'll finish off there, but we've probably come up with at least 3 or 4 topics that are going to run right through the 2 days. So it was a really, really good session. Thank you.